Want smooth blends and great gradation? Then you need to learn feathering and wet blending. Here are the steps you need to add these techniques to your arsenal. This video is sponsored by 3 of Ghost Miniatures. And before we get too far, I want to announce that I'm doing a birthday giveaway. If you want to learn more, watch to the end of this video. Let's get into it. The brush. For both techniques, you want to use a brush that has a decent sized belly. The smaller the belly, the more back and forth movement you will need to do, and the faster you will need to work. That's because the belly of the brush is designed to hold paint, thus keeping the paint on your brush from drying up. The smaller your brush, the quicker your paint will dry, and the more difficult it will be to blend. Of course, use common sense. If it's a small area, then a smaller brush will probably be fine. But the larger the area, the larger the belly. Paint. First, there are some paints that just work better for wet blending and feathering than others. The faster the paint dries, the more difficult it will be to work with. I personally have a difficult time wet blending and feathering with Chimera paints, but perhaps you will find other paints that give you trouble in your collection.
Just note that it might not be you, it might legitimately be the paint.
When wet blending, we want the paint to be as thick and opaque as possible while still flowing off the brush. I talk about this more in this video here. If you use paint that is too thin or too translucent, you're really just making more work for yourself, as you will have to go back and do multiple wet blending passes or layers of glazing to achieve the opacity you are probably looking for. When it comes to feathering, consistency doesn't matter quite as much. You can feather almost any consistency, from a base layer to a glaze or even inks. Just use whatever paint will get the job done. However, one thing you want to consider with feathering is the size of the pigments in the paint themselves. Some paints use very large pigments, which become visible when the paint is thinned too far. This is particularly noticeable on lighter pastel colors, as white paint is the biggest offender of visible pigments. We will talk about how to avoid this problem later in this video. Technique. Before we begin, first make sure you are ready for painting. One has to work incredibly fast with both of these techniques, so everything needs to be within arm's reach. For these techniques, you will need your brush, paint, a cup of water, and a paper towel. For both techniques, apply your paint quickly in a back and forth motion horizontally on the surface you want to blend. And then immediately clean your brush with water. Wring out the majority of the paint on the side of your glass, then dab it onto a paper towel. After the brush is clean, either dip it into your next paint color or begin to feather out your paint. For wet blending, we want to pull the paint further than where we actually want the transition to be. Again, moving the brush horizontally the same direction we want to be applying our paint. We will then use the second color to pull back towards our center line, again going in horizontal strokes. As you begin to move towards where you want the blend to end, you will put more pressure onto the back of the brush. Once your blend is complete, delicately lift your brush, attempting to disturb the paint as little as possible. For feathering, you will want to apply the paint approximately 1 brush length over your previously applied paint. Then place the tip of the brush where you want the gradation to begin. Any area the brush touches will be blended. Unlike with wet blending, you're not so much going to pull the paint to blend it. Instead, using that same side-to-side motion with pressure on the belly of the brush, you will disperse the paint further onto your surface. Some pigments will also get picked up into the brush itself. Depending on your brush, you might notice that one direction gives a better blend than the other direction. That is the direction you should end your blend on, and go ahead and pick up your brush. Let's take a minute to talk about this week's sponsor, 3 of Ghosts. 3 of Ghosts is a small boutique game company that is currently in the process of releasing a game to go along with their gorgeous miniatures. 3 of Ghosts is a survival horror game set in a dark-fi world where you explore forgotten tombs to uncover ancient technology and attempt to understand the history of the world. This week I painted the Gutter Witch, who uses her magic and biologic cauldron to help her allies and hinder enemies. Currently, 3 of Ghosts offers free shipping on orders over $100 if you use the code 100GHOST. And if the game sounds like something you'd like to play, sign up for the newsletter on their website. Thank you 3 of Ghost for sponsoring this video. Back to painting. The trick for both wet blending and feathering is putting pressure on the belly of the brush, not the tip. Every time the tip of your brush touches your paint, it picks up paint and will begin to drag down your gradient, adding paint strokes. Instead, we want to focus on even pressure of the belly of the brush across our entire surface. Ideally, you will be able to feather and wet blend in a single stroke. If, for whatever reason, that doesn't work, you can of course dip your paintbrush back into that color and try again. Or if you're just having a little bit of issue with your blending, you can again clean your brush in water, wring out the majority, dab it onto a paper towel, and again, using the belly of your brush, attempt to blend that out. As a beginner, I highly recommend trying to get it done in one pass. More than likely, you're just going to mess it up if you try to go back over it again. The amount of paint you load on your brush is important. The more color you want to apply before you start your gradation, the more paint you will want to load onto your brush. If you want to start your blending immediately, then you will load less paint onto your brush. This will take trial and error, but you will get used to it soon enough.
Whether you are wet blending or feathering,
The closer the colors are in hue or value, the less obvious those individual pigments and paint strokes become. Attempting to wet blend black to white is more difficult because of the large difference in value that the colors need to create a seamless look. The same thing is true with feathering. Wet blending white to gray and then gray to black is far easier than wet blending black to white. I highly recommend practicing on primed bases to help you learn. It's an easy, low-stress way to practice these techniques without worrying about potentially ruining your model. Alright, here it is. I'm doing a giveaway for my birthday. It's going to include paints, models, games, and more. All you have to do is go comment on the Instagram post marked giveaway. And though this isn't required, I will definitely be checking to see if you are subscribed to this channel and if you've commented as well. Be sure to only comment on the Instagram post one time. Then keep an eye on your messages at the end of April because I will be announcing that one of you has won the giveaway.
alright, that's it from me. You know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe, go support me over on Patreon, and have a wonderful day. I look forward to seeing you next time.